Hey everybody, welcome to the Cardboard Cave. Here in the cave today, for the first time in just a little bit, to do something exciting to me because I actually have multiple new board games to talk about. So if I found a way to get this posted to the podcast feed, because I'm a technical idiot, if I found a way for my friend Chris, I should say, to get this video, to pull the audio from it and post it to the actual Cardboard Cave podcast, and you're listening to this right now on the podcast, know that this is also available as a video, which everyone else is watching right now, on YouTube. Cardboard Cave on YouTube is where most of my content is posted now. And those of you who are on the YouTube channel know that probably about 90% of it is not even board game related, for better or worse. But this video is all about board games. So if you want to hear about some of the hottest, newest, and just best board games out right now, whether you're a serious gamer or just curious, this is the best episode of this particular channel to check out. As I've said, and I won't rehash it too much, but two small children right now. My brother, who was one of my main gaming compatriots, also two small children right now. I've had a real hard time with work, family life balance, and board gaming has remained a passion of mine, but I've mostly been involved in listening to podcasts, sometimes buying new games, but very rarely over the last several years have I really played a lot of games, and it's a treat when I get to. But my wife surprised me, and boy, was it a surprise, on my last birthday, by telling me we were going on the Dice Tower cruise. Now, it wasn't just for my birthday. It was also our 10-year anniversary trip, which we had been talking about. But she surprised me that the birthday portion of that trip was that it's not just any cruise, it's the Dice Tower cruise. And for yous who don't know, the Dice Tower is, I mean, they're small compared to, you know, the big guys on YouTube. But in the realm of hobby designer board games, to me at least, the Dice Tower is the biggest. I mean, I know that's not even true. Will Wheaton, does he still do that show? Tabletop? Anyways, at the very least, the Dice Tower covers more board games, a bigger variety of board games, and just more titles altogether than anybody else. And they do a cruise every year and have done it for, I think, 5 years now. And this is not only the first Dice Tower cruise I've been on, it was the first really board game convention of any type I've been to, which is insane because I've been into hobby board games for well over 2 decades. So this is my first Dice Tower cruise, my first board game convention, my first week-long cruise, period. I was on a very short cruise a few years ago. And on top of that, so this was a huge boat, the Oasis of the Seas, Royal Caribbean. I think I heard it's the biggest cruise ship in the world. It can hold up to there was between 6,000 and 6,700 people, I think. But over 800 of those were Dice Tower, for the Dice Tower cruise. So on this cruise, a ship of probably about 6,000 people, 800 of them were board gamers, like serious board gamers. And that's amazing. There was people everywhere to play games with, just all over the ship. I'm not really here to review the cruise itself. I want to talk about these games. But I will say, if you love board games, this cruise is pretty much what you think it would be. It's all the good things about a cruise. Stupidly good food. To be honest, it took me about 2 full days to get past the crowds. I'm an introvert by heart, and it took me a couple of days just to get... Being on a big boat doesn't bother me. I figure if I want to go, that's one of the least likely ways to go. But, sorry, I don't mean to be morbid. But it's just the volume of people, just getting on the elevators. It took a lot out of me those first couple days. By about day 3, I was starting to really enjoy it. I'm ashamed to say it probably took until day 4 until I was, comfortable. Yeah, I'm rocking this thing. Unfortunately, day 4 of a 7-day cruise was when I really started getting into it. But the cruise, if you've ever been on one, you still got all that. You can totally ignore the Dice Tower part if you want to. The Dice Tower part is a convention room They had the main convention room, I believe, on this ship 100% of the time, 24/7, dedicated 100% Dice Tower people. You had to have your Dice Tower badge to even get in. So all the time, day or night, there's going to be at least somebody in there playing games. During the day, it's slam packed. Like dozens and dozens. I don't know how many fit in there, but it was a pretty good sized room, packed with tables and chairs. During the day, packed all the time. You know, like midnight, 1 o'clock, there's some empty tables, but there's still plenty of people playing. So you got 24/7 people ready to play any game you can think of. And the Dice Tower brings their library. I have a lot of board games. The Dice Tower library is insane. I don't think I thought of a single game. Like, I'm just going to see if they have this game. And I went and looked it up alphabetically. There it is. Any game I could think of note, certainly the newer games, the hotter games, I think they were all there, everyone I could think of. But also just a lot of games like, hey, me and my wife love Morels. It's a 2-player card game. I know I've talked about it on the podcast. They had it there. And that's like, oh, let me think of another one. Like, what is another example? Oh, I don't know. Like one of the lesser talked about Ticket to Rides, like Ticket to Ride Africa. Yep, there it is. What's one of the more obscure ones I found? There was a couple that I'm looking around the room now to try to remember that I don't feel like that many people really talk about or know about, but there it was. I can't think of an example now, but basically anything I thought of. Great library. People always willing to play. Plus, a couple times during the week, they have shows with the Dice Tower. So, you know, the Dice Tower panel talking about things. So it's just really cool. You got all the benefits of a cruise ship, plus people and a gaming library ready to play at any time. Because I found in a 7-day cruise, there is a fair bit of downtime. And so my wife and I pretty much still did all the things we wanted to do. You know, we went to, the Aqua Show was amazing. All right, I got to talk about this. I'll get into the board games in just a minute. My wife scheduled us for the Aqua Show because you need to go to these shows. If you paid for the cruise, you're kind of paying for them already. They don't cost extra. And we went to the ice skating show, and it's a very small ice rink, but they were professionals. Like, they were fantastic. They have Broadway shows, and the acting and stuff is like dang near Broadway level. Like, it is of that level. But I skipped out on Cats. I let my wife go to that. I just wasn't that interested. I probably should have gone more on that in a minute. But the ice show was great, but the Aqua Show. So the Aqua Show, I honestly thought, where are they going to keep like a killer whale on this ship? Like, that seems cruel to keep, like, I don't know, Shamu in captivity. I was thinking there's probably sea lions. I don't know, it's just called Aqua Show. I didn't really know what to expect. Well, I felt like an idiot once the show started. Because there are no animals. It is all people. It's stunts and dancing and high diving and crazy theatrics and light show. But there's water. Like, sometimes they're under the water. There's a pool they come out of. There's water fountains spraying everywhere. It's just crazy. Like, it was super great. So you should if you don't do anything else on the Royal Caribbean cruise, be sure you go to the Aqua Show. But yeah, we did all those things. Of course, you know, a nice meal every night, and then buffet style meals during the day. You know, a day out on the beach on their little private island you go to for one day. We did get off on Jamaica on that stop and did a bamboo rafting tour, which was really cool. I thought there's no way this is actually like a little bamboo raft like they show in the picture, but it was. It was definitely a handmade bamboo raft. But our guide was great. He knew what he was doing. He basically had a big, long piece of bamboo. Didn't really row with it, but pushed off the riverbed because it never got super, super deep. Just pushed off the riverbed and navigated us down the river for about 90 minutes. I think it's like a 3-mile stretch of river. The Martha Brae River in Jamaica. That was a great experience. But you're not here to hear about that. So, Dice Tower Cruise is all that cruise stuff, plus board games, so it's pretty awesome. But I just want to talk about what I played, because I played more games that were new to me, plus one that was not new to me, but more games that were new to me on this cruise than I've probably played in 5 years. I don't think I'm exaggerating. So I'm going to go through them. I'm not going to take an incredible amount of time on each one, because there's quite a few here. At the end, or maybe just during it, I will talk about some of my favorites. I want to give you enough to wonder if this is at least something you should go check out. You know, go Google it and see if this is a game you want to check out. And I'm going to come at this from a standpoint of you're watching this because you, for some reason, like the Cardboard Cave channel. You may not necessarily be a huge board gamer. I'll try to keep that in mind, but sorry, sometimes the lingo just comes out without thinking about it. But the first game I played on the cruise was a game I had on my Christmas wish list, but I did not get it. So I wanted to play it to see if I was robbed of the chance to have this game. I'm just kidding. It's not one of the games I got for Christmas, but I was curious enough about it that I did put it on the list. It's called World Wonders. World Wonders is a polyomino tile placement game at heart, meaning basically Tetris-like pieces that you're putting on a board, fitting in different patterns. The idea of this one is you're building cities on this map, and then you're putting actual wonders of the world, well, wooden representations of actual wonders of the world on the map to score points. The basic way you score points is simply by surrounding buildings. Every building you surround, or city, or whatever it's called, the buildings, the cities are the actual tiles themselves. But one has to be totally surrounded on all sides to score. And it simply scores a point. But then these wonders come into play that are basically another way to score some points. Sometimes give you some other things as well. But they also just take up a lot of room on the board, and they can help you surround other things. And these wonders are the cool part of the game. Like, I don't think it would be a solid game regardless, but I don't think people would be as excited if it weren't for these wooden chunky wonders. Like the Great Pyramids actually come as 3 separate chunky pyramids. The Easterhead Islands, you know, there's several of them. The Colosseum is this imposing piece. There's so many cool ones from all over the world. And now I'm blanking on some of them, but just there's a lot of them. There's a lot of world wonders, and they're so chunky and wooden, and they're hand painted. And for a game that's just a normal price, you know, for a hobby board game, like a normal priced $40 to $50 game, those pieces look positively deluxe. Like, they are so cool. I would not expect them in a regularly priced game. I mean, the rest of the game looks good. But I wouldn't be surprised that it's like a $40, $50 game. But those wooden pieces, I'm surprised that every edition of the game comes with those. They're not like some special edition thing. Every edition of the game comes with those, and I think that's pretty cool. As far as the game itself, it's pretty, as someone who's played a lot of games, it's pretty simple. More complex than Carcassonne, if you've played that tile laying game. Maybe along the lines of, it doesn't have a lot to do with it except for the title, but Seven Wonders, which is a card game, is sort of in that range for me. Like, it's not quite a gateway game. It's not quite a game you bring out for people who don't play any games. But it's like a big solid step beyond that. It's not complex, but it's also not super simple. So I would say, like, if you're a beginning gamer, this is the next step after that. Of course, if you're a smart cookie, you can play any game you want to, but there's just usually a natural progression of playing some of the simpler stuff. I'm like, okay, what else is there, you know? In my case, having played games 20 couple years, I actually find myself going back to the simpler games now because in my life being what it is, they require less effort, but it still provide a lot of fun. So I really liked World Wonders. I played so many good games this weekend, or that week, sorry, last week. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to seek that one out to purchase. I certainly would not be opposed to it. Tentatively, I would like to own it, but I'm prioritizing some others that I'm about to talk about. Oh, Chris Yee taught me that game from the Dice Tower. He did a great job. And I did actually get to play this one twice. I came in third place the first time out of 4 players, but my first game wasn't too bad. The second time, I played with Anna and 2 other people, and I didn't write down who won. I played with my wife and 2 other people, and I don't remember who won, but I don't think it was me. Yeah, I enjoyed it both times. The next game I played is one that I did purchase. It's another one I had on my Christmas list, but didn't get it. And after having played it twice at the convention, I did get it. And that is Sunrise Lane. Sunrise Lane is a very simple game that comes in a relatively small box. Like if you've seen Ticket to Ride, it's like less thick and just a smaller square than Ticket to Ride. It's somewhere between like a really small box game and Ticket to Ride. And I think it's a perfect size for it. The board doesn't take up too much room, but the pieces, there's still these nice plastic buildings. The reason this game was a hit, the first time I played it 3 players and I won my first game, that doesn't hurt. The second time I played with 3 players also, and again, I didn't write down who won that second game. But the great thing about this game is I could teach it to anyone in probably 2 minutes. It's simple. It's Dr. Rainer Knizia. So it's, whose name I always butcher. Knizia? I'm just going to say Knizia. That's what I used to say. He's great at making games that are simple in rules, but have hidden depth. And that's what this is. It is a simple game. It's, on your turn, you have 2 choices. You have a hand limit of 5 cards, and these cards are just colored. Just colored. There are no numbers. Yeah, just colors. So, like, there's green, yellow, red, blue, maybe purple. Oh, that's right. There's red and pink, and that does cause a little issue. The red and the pink are a little too similar. That's a shame. But, yeah, red, pink, blue, yellow, green. I think that's the 5 colors. And so you have a hand limit of 5, and on your turn, you can play as many cards as you can legally play out of your hand, and then draw back up 1 more card. Or just skip your turn and draw 2 cards. That's it. Those are your 2 choices. What are you trying to do? Well, all around the board, there's these, they look like dice with pips. 1, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5. 5 is the max. And for example, if there's a green, say a green 3 on the board, you just have to have at least 1 green card to play on that. But if you only play 1 green card on that, you stack 1 of your buildings on it, and it'll be 3 points. 1 card played times the 3 that was on the board. But let's say you have 3 green cards in your hand, and you play them all. Boom. You get 3 of the buildings that you stack on each other, times the 3 points on the board. That's 9 points. So the highest score you could possibly get in a single move would be amazing. And I certainly haven't done it in 2 games. But there are 5s on the board. So say you had a 5 yellow space, for example. You could go there with just 1 yellow card and get 5 points. But if you have 5 yellow cards, which would be hard to do, you probably spend a lot of turns building those up. Discarding back down to 5, then building back up. But if you had 5, you could put 5 buildings on that 5 space and get 25 points. That's the best possible move in the game. I've not seen it done yet. Because you can't go above 5 cards. So you can use the turn to draw 2 cards, but you're going to have to discard something else if you've gone above 5. And the only rule for placing your buildings out is it has to be next to another building. It doesn't even have to be your color. Or a park. There's a rule where you can play a park with any card. It doesn't matter the color. Parks are just these flat tiles. They're not worth points, but they let you continue your turn. So let me try to give a quick example. Let's say there's a 3 yellow here, and I have a yellow card. I'll play on that. Boom, that's 3 points. Then let's say there's a pink 1. I don't have any pink cards, but I can just throw away a random card and put a park on there. Then I can continue my turn. Let's say there's a 4 blue. After that pink, that's what I was trying to get to. Let's say I have 3 blue cards. That's the other 3 cards in my hand. Boom, boom, boom. 3 times 4, that's 12 points. So I use the park as like a gap filler, basically. But, again, anybody can build off anybody's buildings or anybody's park. So it's not very restrictive in that sense. The only rule is once you start building on your turn, if you're going to continue building, you have to continue on that path you're making right now. Like you can't go back and build somewhere else that turn. The other twist, though, and I think this is important, is that's during the game. But at the end of the game, there's 4 quadrants on the board, like boom, 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 boom. That all score bonus points for whoever's in first, second, or third. For example, I think it's the blue spaces. It's the tallest building. So you look to see, does anybody have any 5 tall buildings? Because that's the max. You can never have taller than a 5 because you've got a 5 hand limit, and that's how you put the buildings down. If nobody has 5s, then you go into 4s. So like, for example, if I had 2 4s and you only had 1, then I'm going to score the 10 bonus points. then you would get second. And you just keep going that way. And then on the red spaces, you have just total number of buildings. So whoever has the most buildings in this square is going to get the points, and so on. So there's those bonus points at the end. And then finally, whoever has the biggest continuous group of buildings that just touch each other, there's also bonus scoring for that. And that's it. Total score wins. Without being able to see the game, my explanation may not have made sense, but I basically explained the whole game to you. That's pretty simple. Really enjoyed it. I can't imagine this being anybody's absolutely favorite game, but I also think a lot of people are just going to enjoy it. And that's why I got it, because I enjoy it. I can teach it in 2 minutes, and it's just fun. So, Sunrise Lane, highly recommended. Plays 2 to 4 players. I played it with 3 players both time. I think it would work with all numbers, though. 3 and 4 might be the sweet spot, but I think it would work fine with 2. All right, the next game was exciting. I've wanted to play this game for a while. It's called QE. Just the letter Q, the letter E. I think it stands for quantitative easing, which apparently is a term in economics. Don't really know about that. Don't really care. But in this game, another game I can explain to you right now, and you'll know how the whole game works. So you're trying to get points by collecting these. They're basically poker chips, like cardboard thick poker chips. I don't know. They were more drink coaster sized, actually. I can't remember. Anyways, you're collecting these chips that represent different countries like Japan, China, US, Russia, whatever, that represent economic goods and trades in different countries. And it's basically set collection. For example, if you are the Japanese player, you really have extra incentive to go for the Japanese tiles, but they're all valuable. The tiles themselves have points on them. The more you collect of a certain color might be points. Having a variety, like sets. That part, you can just look at the rules yourself. I'll probably get that wrong. But it's pretty basic set collection. Trying to collect these chips. What makes it a weird game and a really cool game, and makes it sound broken unless you play it, is it's also the way you get these chips is bidding, auctions. And the way it works is, whoever's the auctioneer writes down visibly for everybody to see what they're willing to pay. Maybe there's this USA chip that's worth 3 points, but it could be worth different points to other people depending on what they're collecting. But on the surface, it's worth 3 points. And let's say the current auctioneer is willing to pay $10,000 for it. They write it down with their dry erase board. Everybody can see it. But everybody else at the table, you take turns being the auctioneer, and everybody else at the table secretly writes down what they're willing to pay. Turns it in, and without revealing who bid what, the auctioneer simply says, okay, Johnny, you won the auction. You get the chip. Doesn't reveal to anybody else. He knows what Johnny bid, but doesn't reveal to anybody else. And then the losers, nobody knows what they bid except for the auctioneer. Why does it matter that nobody knows exactly what Johnny bid? Because the twist of this game is you don't have a money supply. You have unlimited money. You're like a government. The sky's the limit. However, at the end of the game, the single person who bid the most money total, because you're going to have the stack of chips with the amount of money you bid written on the back of them, the person who bid the most over the entire game loses, can't win. And then you see who the winner is of everybody remaining. So, in the game we played, I swore that there was at least one other guy who was bidding way more than me. But I didn't have perfect information. I only saw the bids when I was the auctioneer. But I swore he was bidding more than me. So the game ended, and I crushed everybody. I mean, I'm talking... I didn't write the scores down here, but I think I had like 46 points. And the next person was like not even 30. Like maybe 29 or something. I crushed everybody. I'm like, heck yeah. And then we added up how much money we spent. The highest player besides me was $287,000. It's a pretty conservative game because you can literally write down $10 trillion. Whatever, as long as it's a real number. Google, like what is Google? It's like how many zeros? You could write that down if you wanted to, as long as you're willing to add it up. But the single person who bid the most can't win. But $287,000 was the highest spender. I spent $294,000. I couldn't believe it. I'd spent more than anyone. So I almost pretty close to doubled everybody else's score. But I overdid it. I spent too much, so I lost. I was out of the running. So then it was just between everybody else who won. But despite that shocking loss, I pulled a loss out of the jaws of victory. Despite that, I thought it was a pretty cool game. And I don't know if everybody would love it, but it's got this feeling of just being fun, being sort of like a party game, because it's kind of crazy that you can spend how much ever you want to. Yet, if you spend the most, you can't win. I thought it was cool. I really did. And super simple. Okay, next is the one game I played this show. Make sure I'm telling, yeah. The one game I played this show that I have played before. And in fact, I bought this game over 20 years ago. And it was one of my favorite games. And I'm sure I probably mentioned it on the podcast. They just came out with a new edition that looks so much better last year. And the game is Ra. Ra. R-A. 2 letters. Ra. Ra is an auction bidding game that is by Dr. Knizia. By the good doctor. I mentioned Sunrise Lane earlier. Ra is a classic. Came out in 1999, which in the realm of hobby board games is practically ancient. It's amazing. This new edition changed nothing in the rules. It's the exact same game. It just looks so much better. And it was one of the most popular games of the show. Like, it was being played constantly. I played it twice while I was there. I would have loved to play it more. Ra's amazing. I love Ra. All I'm going to say is, it's an auction game, or not auction bidding, yeah. Bidding game that I think, honestly, people who aren't big on bidding games may actually still enjoy. The ingenious thing of Ra is, you have these wooden, they're called sun discs. These wooden sun discs with a number on it. And you only start with 3. And depending on the number of players, like one player might start with, see, in a 4-player game, I think number 13 is the highest one in the game, in a 4-player game. So one person might start with the 13, the 6, and the 2. And I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but something like that. So you got like the best bid in the game, then a kind of middling one, and then a lousy one. So it's how you use those 3 bids. That's all you have for the round. And the game lasts 3 rounds. So when you win an auction, the point is you're basically collecting tiles. It's a civilization, god theme, Egyptian theme. You got monuments you're collecting that score at the end of the game. You got pharaohs. You got the Nile River, which only scores if you have at least 1 flood. You got god tiles that actually let you steal a tile from the auction track. Civilization tiles that actually cost you points if you don't collect any, but they go away at the end of every round. In fact, you basically got the left side of your board and the right side of your board. The left side of the board has different things that score in different ways. So does the right side. But at the end of every round, everything on the right side goes away. Like people die off, the floods dry up, that kind of thing. So, you're constantly looking what you have, constantly looking what other people have, and trying to get the most you can with the bidding tiles you have. But it's one of these games that's just pure competition, because the rules really are so simple that it's just pure competition of what are they going to do? What are they willing to give up their 10 sun disc tile to get those? So on your turn, you have 2 choices. Draw another tile out of the bag, slap it on the auction track. The auction track fills up, and whenever a bid is called, everyone is going to be bidding on everything on that track. You get all or nothing. So do you add another tile to the auction track, make it potentially sweeter, or do you call a bid? You take this big chunky, in the new version, this big chunky wooden Ra token, boom, slam it down, Ra. That means you're calling an auction. If you call the auction intentionally, you have to bid if nobody else does. Otherwise, nobody has to bid. The way a regular auction works is, when a Ra token comes out of the bag, you toss it to the side and it starts an immediate auction. And so the way an auction works is dirt simple. Whoever called the auction, whether they did it intentionally or just because a Ra tile was drawn, the next player starts. They put a sun disc token out in the middle, or they pass. Next person, sun disc token out or pass. And when it comes back to you, you have the last choice. And that's it. It only goes around once. So if you pass on something, you're out of it. If you put out a token and wish you put a higher one out, too bad. It's once a round. And the trick is, and one of the most clever things is, whatever token you bid with, say you bid with the 13, the best one in the 4-player game, it goes to the middle, and you get the one that was in the middle. So not only are you bidding on all the tiles, you're bidding on an auction token, a bidding token that you'll be using next round. So for example, like there's times I passed on some pretty good stuff because I had the 13. Like one of the rounds I had the 13. Nobody could beat me. I could get whatever's out there. But like the 2 sun disc was in the middle. So I knew if I gave up my 13, I'm getting a 2 in return. So next round, instead of having a 13, I'm going to have a lousy 2 to bid with. But there's times it's worth it. So yeah. Also, every time a raw tile is drawn out of the bag, it causes an auction, but it also moves the sun boat. When the sun boat reaches the end of the line, the round ends. So it could come down to just one person having bidding tokens left, and they can keep on going. But if the sun boat ever reaches the end, because raw tiles are getting drawn, it ends immediately. Nobody gets to bid on anything. So you could end the round not even having used all of your bidding tokens, and that's painful. So you're both considering, what do I need to score this round? What do I need to score in the last round? For example, monuments only score in the last round. So you're competing with people like to have the most pharaohs. That's the competition. To have at least one civilization tile so you don't lose points. To have at least one flood tile so you can score your Nile River tiles this time. There's all these little things you're competing for. But also, you know, whatever bidding tokens you end up with, that's what you're going into the next round with. I'm not going to say any more because it's just one of those games. You got to play it. It's just fun. It's exciting. I love to play Raw with people that get into it. By nature, I don't think bidding games are for everyone. But I really do feel like this one is just so tight. You only have 3 tokens to bid with. It's the opposite of QE. In QE, you write down any number you want, and that's your bid. In Raw, you got 3 choices. Maybe less if you've already used some that round. You got 3 bids for the whole round. 9 bids is the most you're going to get for the whole game because it's 3 rounds. That's if you use all your bids. Raw is great. Love it. Highly recommend it. The new edition. Forget they came out with a Pharaoh edition, which they had in the Dice Tower library. It's amazing. But the standard edition, I paid $36 for it. It might retail for $45 or something. It is one of the best sets of components I've seen in a game at that price range. This huge bag, and it's a beautiful bag. This huge bag of tiles are very thick and sturdy. The chunky wooden raw token, the boards, the player boards are so well done with all the information you need for scoring right there on your own personal player board. It's a great production. I have so much nostalgia for Raw, but I actually sold my original copy because I just knew, as much as I'm nostalgic for it, nobody else I play with is going to prefer the original edition over the new one. Highly recommend the new edition of Raw. It's the only one you can buy now, so if you want Raw, that's the one you're going to be buying anyways. And it's very affordable for how good it is. Next is a big one, literally. Foundations of Rome. I did have a very ancient and Roman theme this time. Foundations of Rome comes in a big crate. It's a Kickstarter, or actually GameFound. It's a GameFound crowdfunding game. Comes in a huge crate. Not going to spend a lot of time on it, except to say Foundations of Rome was not like anything else I've ever played. I did play this game twice. Lost the first time. Would have won the second time. I ended up getting second place, but I would have won the second time. But my wife, who was way more tired than I realized and didn't really understand what was going on, which made me feel bad because apparently I did a bad job teaching it. She was just way more tired than I realized. She made a move that technically made no sense at all and ultimately handed the second place player 14 points on her last turn, which totally cost me the game. I'm not bitter, but I'm just saying I would have won the second game, but instead I did not. But Foundations of Rome is physically huge, but it's actually a very streamlined, simple, pretty simple game. Like I talked about World Wonders earlier. I think World Wonders is probably more complex than Foundations of Rome, or at least they're on a par with each other, I would say. The idea of Foundations of Rome is you have your own tray of buildings, and these are 3D plastic buildings that are beautiful, like ancient Roman buildings. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But the core of the game is you're bidding for lots. There's a board. It's like a bingo board. A1, A2, A3. Then you got B1, B2, B3, before, you know, all the way down this grid. And there's lots. And these are the places where you can build your buildings. And so you're just basically buying these lots so you can put different shapes of buildings down. So, for example, if you want to build a building that's a square, then you're going to need, like, you know, 4 lots that are all adjacent to each other. But you got to get them when they come out. So you got to have the money to get them when they come out. Because as people buy, they get cheaper. The cards slide down. So you're just getting these cards that might say A3. You get to put one of your markers on A3 after you pay for it. And so, like, for example, if you're trying to build a building that's maybe like a L-shaped, so you got one here, 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 and you need one more over here. If that lot comes out, you got your eyeball on it, and you're wanting to do everything you can to get it. But you got to have the right money when the time comes. Other people might kind of, you know, screw you out of it. But you're just trying to get your lots together so you can build these buildings down. The buildings basically are government buildings, civilization buildings, and commercial buildings. Commercial buildings give you coins. I'm not going to go into all the rules. But basically, commercial buildings give you coins. Civilization buildings increase your population track, which is simply one of the ways you score. And it's interesting how that works, but I won't get into it. But it's basically population helps you score. And then the government buildings are straight up victory points that score based on other buildings. For example, if you plop this government building here, it might score you 1 point per person symbol. So like if you got a bunch of those buildings that provide population around it, yours or somebody else's, it doesn't matter whose they are, you could really rack up with that building. One of the government buildings might give you 1 point for every 2 coin symbols. So if you got a bunch of commercial buildings around that one could be worth a lot of points. Those are really lucrative. That's kind of the secret, one of the secrets to the game. But it's just really fun trying to get your buildings out. One of the twists are, and I know another game does this, and I can't remember, is it Quadropolis? Might be New York. Was it New York 1901? That might be the one. But anyways, if you got a smaller building and you got the lots surrounding the smaller building, you can demolish the smaller building, take it off the board, put a bigger one on top of it in the space. So you're going to lose whatever reward the smaller building was giving you, but you can replace it with a bigger one as long as you own the lots around it to allow for it. Yeah, there's other scoring like at the end of the game and stuff, but that's basically how it works. The crazy thing about this game is it looks like this mega huge complex game because the buildings are beautiful and there's lots of them. But really, it's a pretty dang straightforward game at the end of the day. Like, it's not a hard game at all. So it's a rare example of like a family weight game that's massively overproduced. Usually these massively overproduced games are like heavier games, like lots of miniatures and battling. This is not that. This is like, it's a little more complicated than Ticket to Ride, but I would compare it to like maybe Ticket to Ride UK. You know, one of the Ticket to Rides that has a little more going on, or Rails and Sails, as far as there's just a little more going on than Ticket to Ride, but not a heck of a lot more. Like, it's that level of game and complexity, but is produced like this massive game. Of course, it's not cheap, so this is going to be one of those things. I thought it was really good. Really, really good. For the average person who's not loaded with money, my recommendation would be the game is worth getting, for sure. It's a great family game. I love it. Like, really liked it. But they're coming out with an edition, and I don't even know what it's called. It's not called Foundations of Rome. I think it's based in New York City, but don't quote me on that. It might be Paris, actually. It's based on another city. It's Paris. I think it is Paris. But it is just going to use flat cardboard tiles, not the big 3D buildings. So it'll probably be like a $40 to $50 game. As long as they do it right and don't, you know, make it still good quality, as long as they do it right, that honestly could work really well and would be a fraction Like I'm talking $300 for the fully deluxe massive game compared to probably $40 or $50 whenever this other one comes out. And it could be identical gameplay. That's the thing. Now, this is an heirloom game. Foundations of Rome is a game you could keep around forever because it's beautiful. It's just, it looks so amazing. But if you just are interested in the gameplay and don't want this like heirloom game to pass down to generations, then probably whenever this new version comes out, whatever it ends up being called, I would totally keep your eye out for that because it's totally worth costing like $40, $50. Is it worth like $250 or $300? I mean, you could get several other games for that. So purely on an objective level, I would say no. But you also know what you're getting. You're getting a gorgeous production that's probably just going to make you smile every time you pull it off the shelf and see all these pieces. So I can't say, but there's the information for you. You can make up your own decision. The next game I played, let me take a drink. I'm trying to hurry up a little bit. I realize this video is going to be very long, but I knew it would be. I've not played this many games in a long time. I'm tempted actually to do this in 2 parts. Should I? 2-part video? No, let's just keep going. The next game was Galactic Cruise. Galactic Cruise was a game that's not even out yet. This is the one I didn't realize it was a prototype because it looks finished. It looks really good. But it's technically a late prototype for a game that's coming to Kickstarter in March. Galactic Cruise, one of the designers, there's 3 designers, Dennis, and I'm sorry if I got your name wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Dennis. Hope I got that right. He was there teaching the game. Wonderful guy. Oh my goodness, this is a heavy game. But I love the look of it. I love the theme of it. It's perfect to be on a cruise ship because it's a spaceship, but it's a cruise ship. Galactic Cruise. And all I'm going to say about this game is I played a 3-player game. One person had to bow out. They let us know ahead of time. So it went down to a 2-player game. There's certain things you do to make it work better as a 2-player game. Like to make it tighter. But otherwise, I think it plays up to 5. Certainly up to 4. Definitely up to 4 at least. I think my final score was 135. Yeah, 135. The other guy got 155, but he had played the game several times. So I actually feel okay about that. I feel like I finally got it by the end of it. All I'll say about it is it's a lot. Like, don't play this game if you've not played some heavy games. It's a heavy game. You know, probably medium heavy on the Board Game Geek scale, but it's pretty dang heavy. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot to keep up with. But it is a game that I'm very intrigued by, and I do feel like the theme actually helps with it. I think the theme makes it a little easier to play once you get going, because it makes sense. You're advertising your cruise to customers to bring them in the queue. Once they're on the cruise ship, it's not enough just to fill the seats, fill the rooms. You want to advertise expeditions. So when you go on these expeditions, you got people wanting to go on them, which feels very thematic. Now, the expeditions are like on other planets and stuff, like crazy stuff, because it's a galactic cruise. But I love the theme. It's honestly, it's like one of the campier episodes of Star Trek where they go on a planet and have a vacation day or whatever. It reminds me of that. And there's stuff everywhere, and it's massively overwhelming at first. But I love the way the game looks, which is no surprise. It's artwork by Ian O'Toole. He knows what he's doing. I'm very intrigued by it. I absolutely have saved the Kickstarter project. So when it launches, I'll get an email notification. There's a lot in this game. And like I said, it already looked finished to me. And it's already super nice looking. I have a feeling this sucker's not going to be cheap. It's just going to be one of those heavy Euro games that's got a lot of pieces. It's heavy. It's going to cost quite a bit. But if it's not crazy, if it's not outrageous, if I like the way the campaign looks, if I feel like they're doing their best, like to keep shipping prices reasonable, it's it's not going to take a lot to draw me in. I know a game this heavy, this rules dense, it's going to be a while before I get it played because those just aren't happening in my household right now very much. Hardly at all. But I'm very intrigued by it. Like, it's a game that I would like to see on my shelf and I'd like to see eventually get played. Yeah. Check it out if it looks up your alley. I couldn't possibly review it after one game. I don't feel like I fully, or even enough to really know what was happening, could really tell you what was going on until like near the end of the first game. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting this now. And I started doing moves that made sense and really started getting into it. I would have loved to play it again, but honestly, in a convention setting with all those people, it's a lot to learn a game like this. But it was only the second hardest game I learned this cruise. And I'll get to that in a minute. But next is a much lighter game, and it's an awesome game. I hope people aren't tuning out of the video because we're at 45 minutes now, because this next game, totally awesome. It's called Heat. Heat is a racing game. It's a racing game where you